All right. So like I said, thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this panel. We have 3 panelists with us. There's one who could potentially be running a little bit late. So we will potentially have someone else joining us. We'll just pause and let them introduce themselves once they join. But we can go ahead and get started, and I'll go ahead and call on each person because I know with Zoom, the awkward pauses can sometimes be uncomfortable. So we'll get started with you just giving an introduction and a brief overview of your current role, and we'll start with LeeAnne.
Thank you. I am LeeAnne Briggs. I am the program director for the Medical Laboratory Science program at UT. MLS is a degree at UTK, and we also have a 4+1 route for students who already have degrees.
Nice to have you here, LeeAnne. Kennedy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Kennedy Wade. I am from Knoxville, and I work in Knoxville with a company called Eli Lilly and Company. And for those of you who that doesn't sound familiar to, it is a pharmaceutical company. So I am in pharmaceutical sales, and I've been there for about 2.5 years. So I'm really excited to chat with you guys about it today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, up next, we'll have Lesleigh introducing herself. Lesleigh.Averitt.
Hi, my name is Lesleigh.Averitt. I work for Sarah Cannon, which is the Cancer Research Institute of HCA. My current role is Senior Manager of Site Relationships and Support Services, and I've been with Sarah Cannon for about 6 years now.
Awesome. All right, so we'll just continue in that order with each question if that works for you all. So our first question, what steps did you take to accomplish your career journey and obtain your current role?
Well, I went through the MLS program at UTK. We won't say how many years ago, but I knew that I always wanted to work in healthcare. Never wanted to touch patients though. I knew I always wanted to be in the background kind of. And when I looked at all the other allied health fields, lab just kind of fit with what I wanted to do. So I obtained my bachelor's degree in MLS and said I was never going back to school because I had had enough of school. But within about, within probably a year, I was working on my master's in public health, which I did obtain from UTK with a concentration in administration and health planning. And so I used that to move into the management role in the laboratory. And I managed a laboratory and imaging center for a physicians group. And we had 65 physicians in that group. And then I got my Teach Tennessee certification to go back and teach. After I had 3 kids, I decided the management role was a little much. So I started teaching high school, which was a massive shock when you didn't have kids that age. And I taught for a few years, about 5 years. And then someone at UT knew that I was teaching, and they told me about this program director role and wanted me to apply for it. So even though I'm the program director, I'm also an instructor for the MLS classes. So it kind of just came full circle that I got to get back into the healthcare field with the laboratory, which I love, but in the teaching aspect of it as well. As far as moving into a management role, I think the master's probably helped me in that. With just an MLS degree, I think that helped me move up a little bit as far as the promotion goes.
Awesome. And Kennedy, would you like to share?
Sure. So I mentioned I'm in pharmaceutical sales, and I got that job pretty quickly after college, so not too far away from where you guys are at right now. I actually played volleyball in college. I went to Tennessee Tech, so just a hop and a skip away from Knoxville. And I've been in sports my whole life. And so I knew that whatever I chose to do with my future and my future career, I wanted it to be centered around teamwork and working together and collaborating and winning and all those kind of competitive things that have always been a part of my life. And so honestly, to be totally honest with you guys, I had no idea what I wanted to do come like my junior year. I was like, okay, like what's out there for me? What can fit in these where can I find these themes that I love? And I quickly learned about the industry of pharmaceutical sales and just medical sales in general. And the more I learned about it, the more interested I became in the aspects of being able to work on a team, being competitive. But ultimately, when I began to learn more about it, I realized that it is such an incredible position because I get to partner with healthcare providers on helping them make decisions for their patients and what they decide to treat them with as far as our drugs and our products. And so it is an extremely exciting and rewarding and challenging job, but I have found that it definitely suits those things that I was looking for. And as far as my degree was in exercise science, which gave me a little bit of a science edge going into that kind of role. I also had a minor in business, which that was obviously something that helped me too, just having kind of a business mindset, because in my role, you are very much your business owner. You manage your own business. You really have to be strategic and planning, but then leverage those competitive skills to sell your products and to grow your business. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Awesome. What about you, Leslie?
Yeah, so I graduated from Austin Peay State University in Clarksville. And I graduated with a bachelor's of science in chemistry, thinking that I was going to become a pharmacist. So I had a mutual friend who I networked with, I met through college, and they knew of someone that was interviewing for jobs and had some openings at Sarah Cannon. So I applied because right after graduation, I decided to take a year off, needed a break from school. So I was going to take that year off, kind of reset and go into pharmacy school. So I started at Sarah Cannon. I started at an entry-level position and I fell in love with the company. And as that year just kept getting closer to thinking about pharmacy school, I was like, this isn't what I want anymore. I'm making such an impact in the company just at an entry-level job that I couldn't go away from it. And everybody's been touched by cancer in some sort of way. And that also kind of kept driving me to continue working at Sarah Cannon. So I kind of moved up in positions. I took a position as a study coordinator in a new role that Sarah Cannon had developed. And then I moved into a manager role overseeing some of our phase 1 clinical trial components. And then just recently, actually about a month ago, I moved into the senior manager position overseeing our study startup, as well as our pharma site relationships. So it's actually funny to hear Kennedy on, because that's kind of what I work with, is with companies like Lilly.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is, what is the most challenging aspect of your role? And again, we'll start with LeeAnne.
Well, if you look at the role that I'm currently in, of course, education, it's the online and all of the stuff that we've had to deal with COVID. But if you look at the role of actually what an MLS is, I'm not even sure I said what that is, medical laboratory science. That field is just, there are so many job opportunities, it's crazy. And the laboratory is never overstaffed, never. And so thinking about that with what would be your most challenging thing is to be able to handle the workload and not be stressed. It's definitely an area where you have to be able to multitask, and you work on a team, but yet you are totally, absolutely responsible for everything that you're doing. And you're putting out those lab results that 70% of all medical decisions are based off of lab work. So crazy important what you do. You're so much in the background lots of times. You don't get the kudos for that, but the workload is always busy, and taking pride in your work and handling that and putting out the best possible results so that your physicians are able to treat their patients accurately. That's what I always found most challenging, is the workload that you always have, because in healthcare, it's just like in any role in healthcare, nursing, in x-ray, anywhere that you work, you're never overstaffed. You never have enough staff for the volume that's coming through.
Yeah, what about you, Kennedy?
Yeah, I would say that one of the most challenging parts of this industry as a whole, no matter which segment you get into within pharmaceutical sales, no matter which disease state you're working with and you're selling products in, it's always a challenge to stay at the top of your game with knowing what that disease state is all about and knowing exactly how physicians are treating their patients and all of the options they have. And so you've really got to have a strong medical professional edge yourself. Regardless of what background you came from, it's something that's expected of you to know and really get a good grasp on so that you can be that collaborator and that partner with your healthcare providers that you call on. And I would say the other challenging aspect is, like I mentioned before, being a business owner. You're given a lot of autonomy in this job to take your business and run with it, whichever way you see the most growth opportunity. And that's a really challenging skill to learn and develop coming from a place of no background in sales or a background in anything like that. And then using, those skills to figure out how are you going to set your products apart from all of the competing drugs in the marketplace. There are so many drugs out there that healthcare providers have to figure out which one to use. And a lot of times that decision is based on the value that your relationship with them brings them. And so investing in that quality relationship and investing in bringing value to the needs they have is so critical. And it can be the most rewarding, but also the most challenging part of my job to learn how to do that really well.
Yeah, so, to go along with both LeeAnne and Kennedy on this, and to really talk with what LeeAnne spoke to, we've learned a lot, just having to adjust into this remote environment and the challenges associated with that. And then also in healthcare, in general, there's constantly changes going on. There's constantly the next big thing, the next best thing. And I think that having to understand and be able to be flexible and go with that, and knowing how to be that person on your team that's able to help drive things forward, and how to adjust to those changes. Everybody's adjusting right now, like LeeAnne was talking about with COVID, but healthcare has always kind of been having to roll with those changes as they went along. But it's also fun because then you get to have an always changing environment too.
Yeah, so kind of on the flip side of the challenging, what is the most rewarding part of your role? And again, we'll start with LeeAnne.
Well, I have two different perspectives, right? I love being an educator, and I get them when they're in their senior year. And so we train them so fabulously and put them out there work ready. And our students are always sought after because they are so well trained at a level 1 trauma center. Not great for the patients who come there, but wonderful for the educational mission that we have. We see the worst of the worst. And so you get these great experiences in every disease state possible because we have so many specialties there. So putting those students out into the workforce and seeing them work and thrive, and all of the wonderful comments that we get, and that they enjoy their job and helping people, nothing better than that. From the tech perspective of it, though, it's just helping the patients and knowing that what I am doing is so important. And the lab is just one of those departments that you really don't get the kudos for. Nobody ever says those lab people are just fabulous. Don't they do a great job? Nobody says that. Everybody looks at the providers and the nurses and the people that they get to see. They don't get to see the lab people, or except the phlebotomist, and everybody, hates the phlebotomy people. So that's the perspective of what a lab person is. But knowing that what I am putting out and taking pride in my work and making sure that those results are great so that my providers can give the best treatment and monitoring and diagnosing possible. It's so worth it every day, even though you go in and you get slammed and it's crazy busy. There's just nothing better than knowing that you're helping people like that.
I would say like ditto a million times to what you just said, LeeAnne, because I think anywhere you work in this industry, it is so patient-centered, and it is so centered around better patient outcomes, no matter which avenue you go and which area you may choose to work in the healthcare industry. If you center your goal and mission and everything about the way you do your job around bettering patient lives, you will succeed and you will go really far, because that is the core of especially what I do. Although, pharma is a very for-profit industry and it is a money-making industry. What I really love about my company and about this job is that they do such an incredible job making the center of what we do around the patient and making the purpose and mission behind the conversations we have every day with our healthcare providers. And every meeting, every lunch, everything we do and say and breathe, it's for bettering patient outcomes and for providing a solution for a customer. And I never thought getting into this role, I thought I would feel as close as I do to impacting the lives of patients, because we never treat patients, right? Like we're just on the other side of the table talking to the customer. But it is so rewarding and amazing when that customer comes back and says, hey, I used your product for this patient and it completely changed their life and they're doing so great. And it feels so satisfying to know that all the work you do behind the scenes to get that product in their hands does not, go unnoticed, and it's not in vain, because it truly does impact the lives of so many patients. So that's definitely what's the most rewarding about my job.
It's always hard going last in a group because you just want to say, yeah, everything that they just said. So everything that Kennedy and LeeAnne just said, I think it's interesting because you go in, you think that only clinicians can help patients because that's just what you think. You go to the doctor and they make me feel better. You don't realize all the extra steps prior to that went in to get to the point of helping that patient. And I think that's what in this industry and in the company that Sarah Cannon HCA is that we make sure that we know our part of the patient's care. So kind of going along with what Kennedy was saying with that is we maybe are across the table doing different things, but we are also helping push that product, that drug, that whatever it is to that patient to help try, in my world, cancer, to help cure cancer, or help make those patients feel better or make it more quality of life. So that's the most rewarding part of it.
Yeah, and we can actually switch orders, Leslie, so you can go first on this next question. I know it's hard to go last. So our next question, what type of experiences should students be seeking if they're interested in a role similar to yours? And we'll start with Leslie.
Oh man, I didn't mean to just,
No, it's fine. I usually try to switch it halfway just so everyone gets a chance.
So I think with trying to get experience gaining into this role, into this world, internships are always very helpful. I know that can be challenging with the current state of COVID, but any opportunity that you can find with that. And in college, I had a job. I know that's not an ability for a lot of people, and that's completely understandable, but it can be something as I worked as a pharmacy technician, again going back to that whole I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, so I worked as a pharmacy technician throughout school, and I think that helped me learn the medical terminology that I would need, and then also research. I've seen a lot of people come in that have worked in the lab research, that have actually, we've had some people that worked on compounds that were later became a drug that we utilized. So really cool connections with that. So I think those things are really important. And I think the ability to network and try to get just different conversations with people, understanding different experiences, kind of like we're doing right now, is really helpful too.
And I get the hard job because I'm always in the middle, no matter which way we go. So I'm stuck between two really great answers. I would say too, networking, just to tack onto what you just said, that is so huge in any role. No matter what you get, you'll always hear it's about who you know. And a lot of times that's true. And so networking is extremely important in making those connections to getting into different avenues. But I would say in this field, any kind of sales experience is so important, because that is what we're doing nonstop on a daily basis, is growing our sales business and growing, our territories and our customers and things like that. So anytime you can have experience managing sales and really getting some good quality experience in the sales side of things is great. But I would also say that any experience you might have from the healthcare industry, whether you worked at a doctor's office up front and took phone calls, or whether you were a nurse, or whether you went the pharmacy route. We have a lot of people who have joined us in pharma coming from all different kinds of backgrounds that have found different pieces of their experience to be extremely valuable in helping them be successful. And so if you think about like a pharmacist joining and being a pharmaceutical rep, how extremely beneficial could that be for them to already know so much about different medicines and different diseases, and have an edge that way. And so I guess I say that to say, don't discount any kind of experience you can bring to the table, because at the end of the day, it really is about how you're selling yourself and like the talents and skills that you've got to really make yourself appealing to a company. So don't discount any of that. And I hope I can offer some encouragement here, because I came from no sales experience whatsoever, but I leveraged my experience as a student athlete. And that was an extremely valuable thing to a company who is so competitive, who does value leadership and teamwork and work ethic, things like that, that I was able to leverage into this opportunity. So don't discount anything, but those are probably some good routes to think about if you're thinking about potentially getting into the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, I'm probably a little bit different in that there's not a lot of networking when it comes to getting into the laboratory type field. But the experiences like Kennedy's talked about are invaluable. There's not a lot of internships, probably none, or shadowing opportunities when it comes to the laboratory, just for safety reasons. I've called around to all the hospitals in town. I always have students ask about shadowing opportunities, and they just don't exist to get that kind of opportunity. So I always tell students, any kind of healthcare experience that you get, because if you take any role in the hospital, whether it's a transporter or working in the volunteer department, where you get to go around and you see different departments, any of that, you're getting exposed to healthcare, you're getting exposed to patient care, and that looks good on your application. For the laboratory piece of it, I always suggest if students are able to work in the labs on campus, it's not a healthcare lab, but you are learning lab skills. You're using pipettes, you're extracting DNA, you're doing all of those kind of things. So it's still lab skills that you're learning. That always looks really good. We actually look at a job period. All of our stuff on admissions is a spreadsheet, and you get points for having a job. You get points for having a healthcare kind of job. Because if you've had somebody who's been out in the work environment and they've been exposed to jobs, we give you credit for that. But I think any kind of healthcare, whether, like Kennedy said, a physician's office, whether it is in an industry that is healthcare related, that always looks good on your admissions criteria.
And so you've talked about experiences. How would you recommend our students going about obtaining these experiences, especially in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic? And we can start with Leslie again.
I was like, are we starting with me? I think it's been interesting. COVID has been very interesting. And I think going back to what Kennedy said about don't discount anything that you've done. I think if it's, a lot of the internships are still happening. I know that we have some internships that are happening. It's just going to be kind of remote, which is going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging for that networking aspect, for people to have those interactions. But they are happening. Like I said, the work, if you have the ability to work, that's still going on in some capacity or another. I'm not sure how the universities are working with just different lab research, but I'm sure there's still lab research going on in person with a mask, I'm sure. So I think those are just, again, seek those areas where you can. And there are opportunities out there. They just may be a little hard to find right now.
I totally agree with that too. COVID has kind of flipped everything upside down. And I really feel for you guys who are in school kind of navigating this right now, because it's certainly been challenging in the workforce as well. So I know that it might be daunting thinking about, oh my gosh, I've got to make a career decision soon, and I'm in this world where nothing is normal anymore. But trust me, we're all in that boat too, regardless if you're in school or in the workforce. So I would say that internships are out there for sure. Companies did not stop doing internships because COVID hit. They're just, like you mentioned, Leslie, might be a little more challenging to find. I know our company does internships. It all looks a little different right now, but that would certainly be a huge, great pathway into this industry, is to land an internship with a pharmaceutical company or any kind of medical sales company, just to get your feet wet with what this is all about, make some connections within the industry. That is probably the best way and option to pursue to get into this industry, as well as just network. And like I mentioned, use the experience you've got, whether it be another kind of sales role, maybe not necessarily in the pharmaceutical industry or medical sales industry, and really find something that you can leverage to turn into getting you in the door with a company like this industry.
The laboratory is probably exactly opposite of what Kennedy and Leslie just said. Our job opportunities skyrocketed with COVID, especially in the microbiology department, which is where all the COVID testing went. We hired at UT alone 3 to 4 techs, and that is all they did, was work on COVID testing because of the volume coming in. There's not really internships, things like that for you to get in regards to the lab. So I always tell students, and it's just like if you're applying to medical school or PA school, the admissions for that has kind of changed from volunteer kind of hours to they want you working kind of hours. And I know when we actually had health fair, career fairs in person, I would always talk to the PA schools and the medical school, basically because I have two boys that are in college and trying to find out pathways for them. The volunteer hours aren't quite as important as they want you actually working now. They like for you to have a job. And the lab is kind of that way. There are lots of opportunities in the lab that you're not a tech. There's accessioners, people who work the front office, receiving specimens in, processing them, taking them where they need to go. They actually do have people who work within the departments that do get to handle specimens, but you're not licensed, but the people who organize the tubes, take the tubes off the machines, store them, and things like that. So there are job opportunities in the lab where you get direct lab experience and you get to see what's happening. And one of the good things probably with any internship and any job that you're talking about is you get to experience it, and you might learn you hate it. And that's a good thing before you spend the rest of your life in something that you don't like. But if you work in the lab and you're like, this is crazy, who would want to do this? At least you know, and you can change your major before you get your degree, and then you find out. So I think it's always great to get some kind of internship opportunity exposure, regardless of the field that you're in, because you might change your mind a little bit. My oldest son worked in surgery at UT, and he was just a tech in the surgical suite. Lots of exposure to everything. And I think it has probably changed his mind about wanting to go to medical school. So that is a good thing. It delayed him in kind of deciding what he wants to be when he grows up, but that's okay. I would hate to go that route and it not really be what you want to do.
Yeah, so along with the experiences, what types of skills should students be focusing on developing right now while they're in undergrad to be successful or set themselves up for success in your industry? And we can start with Leslie.
Yeah, I think soft skills are always really important. Just those key communication, how to communicate. It can be as simple as how do you draft a professional email? And I think also resume, getting with somebody that can help you develop your resume is really important, because that's the first thing that we see about you. And then we typically have a phone call, or Crystal does. Why she's on here, and she'll have a phone call to get to really know you. But that resume is really important, and making sure that's representing you well. I think organization is really important, finding some kind of way to be organized, whether it's how you stay organized or just how you learn from other people, but just organization skills in general. And then just because COVID has taught us a lot, I think it's important right now to learn the appropriate way to have remote meetings or attend a remote meeting etiquette. I actually just met with my team yesterday and we went over WebEx etiquette in that group, because we're still all adjusting to what that looks like, but it looks like it's going to be something that we adopt moving forward, even post-COVID.
I love that you guys are focusing on that. I think that is something that's new for all of us that is going to be a really important part in the workforce moving forward from here on out. So definitely love that. I think along with that too, and you mentioned this, but anytime you can find a way to fine tune your communication skills is going to serve you so well in this field, because it's all about these customer facing interactions and conversations. And so the stronger you can be as a presenter and the more confident you can come across and be in your speech and in your dialogue with customers, the more impactful that is going to be. And we're speaking to healthcare professionals who already think at an incredibly high level. And so I think to be able to stay on that level with them and stand toe to toe with them in a lot of ways and be able to speak their language and communicate with them in a way that is professional is going to serve you really well, especially coming straight from college. In a lot of cases, say you were to jump into this role soon after graduation, it might be unfortunately expected that you're not that professional and you're not that up to par with people who have been in this industry forever. So the more you can look for ways to set yourself apart as a young professional and as an early career professional, as we say, is going to take you so far. That's going to be so impressive to any employer. So I would definitely say communication skills. Another one I would say is find someone to work with on interview skills. That is so huge, whether it be virtual. I know that a lot of that's happening these days with our company is just virtual interviews. I've got people on my team who I have never met before because they came on during COVID and we just know each other virtually. And so I think working on interview skills in general is really impactful because first impressions matter and they're so important, the way you come across and make people feel. And so I think no matter what career you decide to choose, interview skills are so, so important.
Yes. So like Leslie said before, going last, it's, yep, just what they said. The communication is huge. And I have kids your all's age. So, you know, you all have to learn how to talk to each other. You all don't talk to each other enough in person. And these days, this is going to be in person. And that is the WebEx skills. I love that as well, because I really feel like we are going to stay in this mode going forward because it's really made us more efficient, no matter what industry you're talking about. So when you're looking at meetings, taking time to have to stop and either drive somewhere or walk across campus somewhere, it's really made us more efficient in this role. And I feel like a lot of companies are going to stay with this. I feel like a lot of companies are going to remain at home because certain people don't necessarily have to be physically in a location to do their job. So yes, the communication I think is huge, especially dealing with the younger generation and how they don't necessarily communicate as much as the other generations used to face. The interview skills are hugely important. The lab opportunities, the jobs are crazy good. I mean, you get hired months before you graduate in MLS, but that is something I always go over with our students is interview skills. And I ask them to go out and tour the hospitals and see what is out there. And more of the reason I suggest that for more than anything is just to get that opportunity to be in front of somebody and to interact with them. So whenever they maybe do have the job that they're looking for, they're going to have those skills and be a little bit more comfortable and not be so nervous when that actually happens. As far as the lab goes, with the skills that you need, just what I had kind of said before, any time that you can, if you could get a job actually physically in a laboratory, or if you can work in a research type lab and just get those hands-on kind of skills that you'll be using in the laboratory, that's always going to be a plus.
All right, for this next question, I'm going to split it up a little bit because it's about obtaining a job or getting into a program. So we can start with Leslie and Crystal might want to speak to this, but how would our students go about searching for jobs within the research industry? You know, they're obtaining their bachelor's. So what opportunities are out there? How should they apply? And specifically even with Sarah Cannon?
So I will actually refer to Crystal.
Okay, that's fine. Good. Yeah, thanks for letting me join in. This has been really fun to watch. So we post all of our positions, and we are out there on Indeed. We're HCA, so that's our parent company. So we post on HCA. We post on Sarah Cannon as well. But kind of also to echo what about relationship building. So talk to people, see where they're work, make connections, and also try with referrals as well. But again, just going online, searching up jobs, looking and applying. All of our positions are posted out there. And I don't know if we can give away, or if Alexis, if you can give our email addresses out. I mean, anybody is welcome to contact me and talk to me and send me their resume, and I can distribute it to our managers. But all of our positions are posted, and you can find them on, like I said, Indeed, and then at Sarah Cannon and hcahealthcare.com.
Yeah, we can certainly share contact information. And what about Kennedy? Do you have anything to add on how students might go about finding jobs in medical sales, or even specifically with Eli Lilly?
I would definitely echo just searching on the good old Google, on looking for these jobs, looking for postings, because that's really how employers are getting their stuff out there, is online. And I think once you find those, and I would even recommend setting up alerts. That's what I did to find my job, honestly, was searching where I wanted to work, setting up alerts for that area and that location. And then you're notified, you're emailed whenever a job comes up, and then you can really get the ball rolling with furthering that opportunity and really trying to get in with that company. So I would definitely recommend doing some searches, setting up alerts, and then trying to find a referral is extremely valuable, because there's somebody who's already on the inside who can say, hey, I know this applicant, you should give them a shot. And that's always so incredibly fortunate if you do have somebody who can speak highly of you, because that does go a really long way in the interview process. So search and then look for some good referrals.
Awesome, thank you. And I guess for LeeAnne, we can say, what should our students do to get admissions into, like, I know there are master's programs even for MLS and public health, because you have experience with that. So what should our students think about when they're applying for these graduate programs?
I'm sorry, when they're applying for what?
So you have your master's in public health, but there's also like other avenues for medical laboratory science as well. And so applying for those programs.
Oh, other opportunities, you mean, for MLS besides the clinical lab?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. We tend to think of the hospital laboratory, but of course you have physician office laboratory, you have the state lab. One of our graduates from last year went to Nashville and worked in the state lab. We've had several graduates that go to the CDC in Atlanta, which I think would be a fabulously interesting job to work at the CDC. And those are still laboratory type jobs. There are sales opportunities, lots of sales opportunities. Somebody has to sell the equipment that is going into the laboratory, and who better to sell it than an MLS that actually knows how to operate and how to use it. You have to have service technicians on those analyzers, so you can go into the bioengineering side of it for the service. There's installation specialists. So the person sells the instrument, then somebody has to go in and set it up and do all the training. MLS are excellent for that opportunity. I will say, if you're interested in working in a research lab, you do not have to have a license. So although an MLS degree with licensure would be a wonderful backup plan for you to have, if you're going to be in the research field, you do not have to have a license. So I have students who come to me and that they tell me that's what they want to do. And I'm like, well, you don't need this route necessarily. It's a wonderful backup to have, but you do not have to have a license if you want to work in a research type setting. Only if you are working in a laboratory that is putting out diagnostic results that a physician provider will use to treat patients do you have to have a license.
So thank you for sharing that. So my last question I have prepared real quick, just what final piece of advice do you have for students? And then we'll open it up for them to ask their questions. So we can start with Leslie.
Yeah, so I think be open-minded. I started out by telling you guys how I got into my job, and I didn't think I'd work at Sarah Cannon that long. I thought I was going to go to pharmacy school, and then opportunities kept presenting themselves and I took advantage of them. So be open-minded, take advantage of the opportunities as they come up. It could be something as simple as, hey, do you mind leading this project? Hey, do you mind, presenting at this meeting? You just never know where that opportunity may lead you. So just take advantage of those.
And I would definitely tack onto that and say, absolutely take advantage of every opportunity you can, but also find your sweet spot. Find what it is about you that you love to do and you would want to do the rest of your life, because you are the only one who can bring you to the table. And you have got such a unique set of talents and gifts that a company would be so lucky to have. So I would pursue what you are good at and continue to invest in making that part of you better and fine-tuning those skills that you're already really strong in. That's something I really love about my company, is they focus on building your strengths rather than exposing your weaknesses and trying to make you better at your weaknesses. They really try to grow your strengths. And so I think that's a great piece of personal advice that I wish I would have heard when I was in your shoes, is really figure out what it is about me that's going to take my career far. And companies will definitely see that as a huge valuable asset.
Again, everything that Leslie and Kennedy said for sure. And thinking about the laboratory in general, the job opportunities in the lab are huge, and it's that way across the nation. There are so many opportunities out there. We cannot put out enough graduates. It is a wonderful field to be in. And honestly, since I graduated, the field has been that way. There's not very many tech schools out there. And we just can't put out enough graduates. And we have a lot of the baby boomers that are retiring, with just more opportunities out there. I think it's probably one of the job opportunities as far as allied health fields go. It is wide open for sure. Our students always get hired before graduation. And if they choose not to get hired, it's just because they're being a little picky with all of the opportunities that are out there. So yeah, it's a great field to pick up on.
All right, thanks for sharing your advice. At this point, I will open it up for the audience to ask questions. You can unmute and ask your question, or you can send it in the chat, whatever works best.
Hi, my name is John Dobbs. I'm a senior at UT, and I actually had a couple questions for Kennedy. So firstly, you said that you majored in exercise science, right? And then you said you minored in business. And so I was just curious about, how did you transition from initially going with exercise science? How did you transition to sales and eventually see yourself like building that skill set?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of times when I tell people my major, they're like, how are you even in sales? And that's valid, because I didn't know I was going to be in sales either. But I would say that I leveraged what I did learn in the exercise science world, and with that science background, to help me get a fast start in the sales industry, working in the healthcare industry, working in a space where I have to deal with a lot of drugs and a lot of science behind those drugs. And so that helped a lot, as well as I mentioned that business background really helped me think as a business owner and think about how to grow my business. And so I think as I started with my company, and it was shortly after college, so I was kind of drinking out of a fire hydrant for a while because there was so much to learn. I tried to remember those things and skills that I had developed in my time in college and in my time when I was working on my degree. But also I learned probably the majority of what I need to know to do my job while I was doing my job. So I would say I try to leverage my background as much as I could, but a lot of times when you step into a role, like I said, it is like drinking out of a fire hydrant at first, because there's so many new things to take on. So the skill of being a quick learner is usually more important than what you came in, and brought to the table initially. Good question.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also just had a quick question about the internships with your company specifically. maybe what does that look like for an intern at your company? And also just how easily do you see interns progress through those positions, maybe into permanent positions?
Yeah, good question too. So our internship got flipped upside down a little bit with COVID. But typically what it would look like in a normal world is you would get to experience what it's like to be a pharmaceutical sales rep. So you would partner with a team, with a district, and you would work alongside with them, calling on their customers, getting to know the day-to-day of this job. One, to see if it's a good fit for you, but also an opportunity for the company to see if you're a good fit for them. So it's really a time to shine and a time to show what you got. And it's a great way to, like I said, get your foot in the door for a career path to open up. I know people who have worked as an intern with our company and have ended up getting offered roles based off that internship experience. And I think that really goes to show, and it really supports that whole idea of don't discount any opportunity because you don't know what it's going to lead into and turn into. So I would say internship is awesome if you're looking at something to open the door for a further company, a further career with that company. And with our internship program right now, we do, I think moving forward, we'll probably do a summertime internship program where you can do what I just talked about of following along with the team, acting as a pharmaceutical sales rep, getting trained on our products, and able to see if it's really what you want to do and what if the company is a good fit for you as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Does anyone else have any other questions? All right. Don't think there is any, but thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate each panelist taking their time to provide advice and their background knowledge on their industry. And like we said earlier, we can certainly share contact information with each panelist if they're comfortable sharing that. And so thank you again for joining us. And at this point, I'll stop the recording, but if students want to hang out and possibly talk more, that's also fine.